welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. We're out in the field today because it's too noisy to work at home. There's some building work going on near our house. So welcome to the Dibley Diaries. This week we're thinking about Barnabas and how Barnabas was very keen on making sure that everybody was included into the church community, whether in Barnabas's particular case, whether they were Jewish or whether they were Gentiles, and what that meant for them. So we're going to be thinking a little bit about the story of Barnabas and what that meant. But for our rural challenge, I think it's a very interesting question. How do we help people to feel included in our church communities so that they can join in and be part of our worshipping community? I mean, there are all sorts of physical things that we can think about. We can think about wheelchair access, we can think about large print, we can think about all these disability issues, but we do also need to think about cultural issues as well. One of the church buildings where I work and we gather for worship there sometimes, you actually have to come to the church building by going through a door which is closed, which looks like a door on the side of somebody's house. So you have to open their garden gate effectively and walk through. So how does that make people feel when they come in? Are they brave enough to open that door? How accessible is our worship to them? So all sorts of questions about accessibility of worship and not excluding people. How do we not exclude different people from joining our worshipping community, becoming Christians and living in our community of faith? It's more complicated than just having a ramp if you've got steps, but however we do something and whatever we do, we should always be aware and thinking, is there anybody that we are excluding by these actions that we could include by even just making a very simple change? So today's Dibley Diary is about inclusion and accessibility. What does it mean to be part of the church community? So we had different readings today. We had Galatians 2, 1-10 about Paul, Barnabas and Titus's visit to Jerusalem. We had a bit from Acts 11, and we had, for the Gospel, we had the bit from John 15, verse 12 onwards till 17, where Jesus was saying, you need to love one another. You need to love one another. And so reading the passages, I was struck about the argument about circumcision and those who are not circumcised, how that follows for the people that are part of today's reading and what that says to us today. So in the Galatians reading, we hear how Paul and Barnabas, who had been leading the church in Antioch, and Titus, who was a Greek, so not circumcised, they had gone to Jerusalem, and there was some argument about whether or not the Jews in Jerusalem there wanted Titus to be circumcised before they would consider that he was going to be a member of the Christian church. They had a bit of an argy-bargy about it, a bit of argument about it. Paul says that they discussed it, and in the end, Paul and Barnabas won the day, and Titus wasn't circumcised, which I think probably Titus was pleased about. My understanding is that being circumcised as an adult male can be really painful, even today, and it would have been really painful for Titus when he was an adult male. But it partly also made me think, what about all the women? What was the attitude to the women? And I'm not enough of a New Testament scholar to know how people try to apply these circumcised or not circumcised rules to women in their communities. A bit of me thinks the women probably just got on with it, you know, preaching the gospel to each other, feeding the poor, loving people, praying for each other. That maybe the women just got on with it and didn't worry about that sort of exclusion that was going on. But I don't really know. I need to look into that a bit more. But what really struck me was this idea of exclusion. So Titus was at risk of being excluded because he didn't have the correct body modifications for a Jewish man, and therefore he was at risk of being excluded from the Christian community. Whereas today, ironically, I guess it probably would be more likely to be the other way round. How would your church community react if someone who had a lot of tattoos, or maybe a lot of other body modifications that you could see, how would you respond if they came into your church community? How would that be for you? Jesus was always getting into trouble for speaking to the people that the disciples didn't think he should be talking to. If you look at John 4, just think about the interaction between Jesus and the Samaritan woman. She ticks loads of boxes of people that the disciples didn't think Jesus should be talking to, in particular a woman, a Samaritan, and the sort of woman who had to go and get water from the well at midday anyway. There are other people, tax collectors, children. Jesus was all about including people who others felt should be excluded. And our church communities should not be like that. We should be including everyone. Jesus loved and cared for everyone, and so should we. And our challenge as church communities is how to explain that and genuinely encourage everybody to feel included in our church communities. The Dibley moment of the week this week is something which happened in one of my church communities a few years ago. We were raising money to build a new toilet facility and some other welcoming facilities so that our church building would make it easier for all sorts of people to be part of our worshipping community. I went up for a service. I took a friend with me who was sitting in a pew waiting for the service to begin whilst I was getting ready. Whilst I was busy getting ready, a member of our leadership team actually went up to my friend and started talking to her. She was saying, "Oh, I hear you're raising money so that you can put a toilet in, and that will make it a lot easier for all sorts of people to come along to church." And the member of my leadership team said to her, "Yes, the problem is we don't know what sort of people." And I think that really shocked my friend. She carried on speaking to that person after the service. Of course, she did tell me what had happened, and I was really concerned because I thought we had all agreed that we were going to be an inclusive, welcoming church community. I guess there are two things to think about from that Dibley moment. One is just be inclusive, and the other one is if you're speaking to somebody that you don't really know in your church community, then it might be that is going to go straight back to the vicar. You never know. That's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really inclusive and blessed week.